WTVA Sunday Sports Wrap, brought to you by Bullock Toyota in downtown Louisville.
Welcome into the Sunday Night Sports Wrap. I'm Andy Lee. I hope everyone had a wonderful Father's Day. Growing up, Father's Day always meant 18 holes of golf with my dad and then plopping in front of the tube to watch the final round of the U.S. Open, which ended much later this year. For all the flack the USGA took for the setup at Chambers Bay, they ultimately got what they wanted. Three of the game's biggest superstars tied for the lead after 54 holes and a bunch of other golfers in contention. Here's a final look at that leaderboard. Spieth finishes 5 under par. Oosthuizen and Johnson finished tied for second. Adam Scott, Cameron Smith, and Brandon Grace finished 2 shots back in a tie for fourth. Today was also the final round of the 100th State Amateur Championship at the Country Club of Jackson. 16-year-old Wilson Furr finished 14 under to become the youngest winner in the event's history. The Jackson Academy Junior has already committed to Alabama. Tupelo's Hayden Buckley, who you see here, finished tied for second along with MSU assistant Noah Goldman at 6 under. Bulldogs headman Clay Holman finished tied for 6th at 1 under. Buckley, a rising sophomore for the Missouri Tigers, says he was thrilled to be in the hunt after a lackluster start.
After the first 2 rounds being, 10 shots back or whatever, seemingly like it's over. Shooting that 67 was good. I played well. I learned a lot about myself. Putting finally came along, and still got a few more things I need to work on. Full swing's not there. Didn't hit many close to the hole, but I made a lot of putts. So, I'm close, and I'm excited for the rest of the summer.
Many fathers and sons share a love of baseball. It was a Father's Day tripleheader for the Cotton States League. Tallahatchie Rascals took on the Tupelo Thunder in Game 1. The Thunder get to Jackson State's Jordan Bolden in the top of the second. Northeast's John Austin Taylor with the single. Brennan Pugh held up at third, but he'd score on a sac fly. A couple batters later, Northeast's Cole Camp lays down a bunt. Bolden throws it away, and 2 more runs come in to score. Northeast's A.J. Rye drives in another run. The Tigers of Northeast doing all the damage in the inning. The Thunder take this one 4-1. Here's the schedule for the championship series. Game 1 is tomorrow at 7 on ESPN. Game 2 is Tuesday at 7, and if necessary, Game 3 will be Wednesday at 7. Much more to get to on the Sunday Night Sports Wrap. Crummy weather forced a Sunday finish for the Xfinity Series in Chicagoland, and a pair of NFLers with Mississippi ties both talk about their new coaches. Stay tuned for that. Third straight year, former ICC and MSU star Pernell McPhee conducted his summer football camp at TCPS. This year's headliners were McPhee and Buffalo Bills running back Boobie Dixon. McPhee signed with the Chicago Bears in the offseason to be a cornerstone of their defense. After the Mark Trestman experiment failed, the Bears went back to their defensive roots by hiring John Fox. The Buffalo Bills hired Rex Ryan after Doug Marrone abruptly quit last December. Both players talked about their new coaches.
I'm very excited, man. Like you just said, I'm with a defensive-minded coach, so everything is basically about defense right now. And I'm one of the guys who they brought in for the build around, and I'm looking forward to that. And Coach Fox is a great guy, Coach Vic Fangio. So it's gonna be a fun season this year.
Yeah, man. Rex Ryan is the best. His attitude towards the game. It's like he makes fun of the game, but he also is serious at the same time. So it's like cool to interact with him and be in the meeting room with him. It's really one of those things where you have to be in the meeting room to see. But I think what every player wants in a coach.
Rex Ryan certainly keeps things entertaining no matter where he goes. While we're on the topic of coaches, who are the 5 best football coaches in SEC history? That's a question a caller posed to Paul Feinbaum earlier this week on his radio show. I got my start in sports talk radio, so I love topics like this, especially during these slow summer months. After careful consideration and research, I came up with my list. I don't think anyone would dispute putting Bear Bryant at number 1. His resume at Alabama, impressive enough to top the list, but you can't overlook his 60-23-6 record in 8 seasons at Kentucky. I have Nick Saban second. Before you accuse me of being an Alabama homer, I challenge you to find an SEC coach who has done more in less time. 4 BCS titles and 5 SEC championships in 13 seasons. General Robert Neyland used his military background and defensive prowess to forge Tennessee into the SEC's first dynasty. He won 80% of his games and would have won over 200 if he didn't leave for 5 seasons during World War II. The head ball coach checks in at number 4. Steve Spurrier hasn't delivered SEC titles to South Carolina, but his work at Florida gets him on the list. Remember, he inherited a program that was under NCAA investigation for the second time in 5 years and turned them into one of the top teams of the 1990s. Number 5, the toughest call with so many deserving coaches, but I gave the nod to Johnny Vaught for 2 reasons. The Rebels claimed 3 national championships under Vaught's tenure, and only 2 coaches had a winning record against him. Bear Bryant, who was 7-6-1, and General Neyland, who was 3-2. The honorable mentions include guys like Vince Dooley, Shug Jordan, Bobby Dodd, and so many others. I'd like to hear your top 5 SEC football coaches. Tweet them at me. Facebook, email, snail mail, telephone. It don't matter. I just want to hear your opinion. That'll do it for this week's edition of the Sports Wrap. We'll talk to you again tomorrow at 5 a.m. Good night.